Can I start just by welcoming you all to today's session? Thank you so much for joining. We were inundated with respondents wanting to participate. I think we had over 250 sign-ups. So thank you so much for taking some time today to do this. We're going to keep this very short. It will be about 15 minutes or so of slides and then an opportunity for some Q&A. So look forward to hearing what you think. Paula, could you go to the next slide, please? Great. So if I could ask you all to stay on mute during the session and to use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you've got. The session will be recorded and we'll be sharing that together with the slides afterwards for those that want it. And there are closed captions or subtitles that should be available too. Okay, next slide, please. Great. So just to give a quick overview, I will be talking a bit about the Social Mobility Commission, first of all, just to tell you a bit about what's been happening over the last few months. I will then talk about the employer consultation, which we're launching today, as well as the employer advisory group that we're looking to set up in the next month or two. We'll then talk about the consultation questions that we're asking and give an example response. So hopefully we can show you that it isn't going to be too onerous, we hope, on employers asking for lots and lots of information. It should be something which hopefully is accessible to you without being too much of a drain on precious time. There'll be a chance for Q&A and we'll sum up the next steps. So if we go to the next slide, please. Great. So the Social Mobility Commission have gone through a number of different sort of iterations since they were launched back in, I think it was around 2010, with an initial chair who was Alan Milburn and a group of commissioners. They then actually resigned en masse, many perhaps around 2016, 2017, and were replaced with Dame Martina Milburn and a new set of 12 commissioners back in, I think it was around 2018 time. They were running a slightly different type of commission for 3 years. Their term ended in October 2021. And Catherine Bibblesing, who is quite a famous head teacher of a school in Wembley, was appointed chair of the commission by the government in October 2021 and took up post in November, together with Alan Francis, the deputy chair. Alan is a principal of a sixth form college, an FE college in Oldham. And since then, we've been waiting for new commissioners to be appointed. And I'm delighted to say that there are now 6 new commissioners that are in post. Raghib Ali, Matthew Goodwin, Ryan Henson, Parminder Kohli, Resham Katecha and Rob Wilson. In addition to the commissioners, there is also a secretariat, which is a group of about 26 civil servants who are all based in the Cabinet Office and led by me. I joined as director of the commission back in June of this year. Go to the next slide, please. So the commission has a number of different responsibilities. First of all, we publish an annual report called the State of the Nation, which is designed to track social mobility in the UK over time. We also have a function to hold government to account. Historically, that has seen the Commission calling for different policies, for example, around universal credit or around poverty or around different things that the Commission believe the government should be doing. And they also have within their remit activities to improve social mobility in whatever way they can. Now, we conduct research as part of that, and the commissioners, or rather the chair and deputy chair, have asked us this year to focus on the following key themes. So first of all, around education, and linked to that, the role of parents and families. And we're actually doing one of our first activities in that area with a podcast, which we're recording on Thursday, where Catherine Bibblesing and Lee Elliott Major will be talking about the role of parents and families. And later this year, we're doing more research into this area, and we'll be looking to run a campaign next year into or working with parents about the sorts of things that they can do or might do that can really make a difference in terms of supporting their children to be socially mobile. So education and families is one big theme. Employment is another theme. And I think talking to the commissioners, there is a feeling that we've focused perhaps a bit too much in the past on the bigger professional firms and a bit less on smaller businesses who obviously have an enormous role to play in generating opportunity and sort of particularly in levelling up and some of the more local opportunities. Now, it's not to say that we're going to stop any work. The Commission does some great work in the past, working with bigger firms, particularly in certain sectors. We certainly want to continue and to build that, but we want to go beyond that and look at what we're doing with smaller organisations in different sectors as well. We're also looking at enterprise and the economy, looking at the creation of opportunities, their geographical spread, and the role of enterprise. And we're working quite closely with our levelling up counterparts in government, and are very interested to see what the investment zones that have recently been announced will do and how they will play into the levelling up agenda as well. So that's our broader programme of research, which many of the team are focused on. I guess the next slide, please. So historically, the SMC have done some great work engaging with employers, and I know a lot of you have been very involved in that, so thank you very much. We're really keen to continue with that, and that includes the masterclass events and some of the comms campaigns that we've had to share best practice. We have been increasingly focused on T-levels and apprenticeships, and we publish a lot of different resources on our website, socialmobilityworks.org.uk, and those have been for employers of different sizes and in different sectors. We've actually today published a new report called Building Blocks, and that brings out 5 different sort of foundation level or building block type things that you might want to consider as an employer. And I know many of you are doing these things already. So first of all, vision, so creating a compelling shared vision of inclusion. Secondly, talent, so how you might deepen the talent pool. Culture, creating a diverse and inclusive company culture. Progression, so not just focusing on who gets in, but how you can support people from every background to fulfill their potential and to progress within your organization. And then lastly, data, so using data to analyze challenges and measure impact. And that last one is really, really key. Making sure that you are measuring data for people who are joining your organization, but also across your whole organization at different levels is really important, because unless you have data, you can't understand the extent of any diversity problem that you have. So there's lots more details on our website, and please do take a look after the call, and yeah, we'd love to hear your feedback on that report. Now, what we're launching today is a new initiative for us. It's called an employer consultation, and we're also providing details about our new advisory group, which I'll come on to in a second. So I guess in my previous role at Upreach, where I was chief exec for 6.5 years, and we worked very closely with employers and universities, I saw firsthand how so many more employers are really seeking to make a difference in social mobility. And employers are really at different stages in their journey. There are those that have been doing this for 10 years or more, who are really at a very advanced stage. They've been doing lots of different activities. They measure data, they do mentoring, they take a really close look at their recruitment activities. They look at how they're attracting people to apply. They look at the selection techniques. They're looking at retention and progression very closely as well. But equally, there are many employers who are really looking at this more closely for the first time. Maybe they're focused on other diversity strands like gender and ethnicity, and they're starting to learn more about social mobility. But what's clear is that employers are increasingly looking to do more in this space. And what we wanted to do was to understand from you what you're finding is working. So it might be that you're doing a great mentoring program and you find it's really, really effective, or it might be that you're using contextual recruitment and find it helps. Or it might be that you've tried blind recruitment or employee networks, and you're finding that they're having impact too. Or perhaps there are things that you've tried that you hoped would work, and maybe they're not being as effective as you hoped, or maybe there's some challenges that remain. So we really wanted to ask you, who are doing these things firsthand, what you think, and then to create a report and to publish those findings for you all to see, to help employers, including yourselves and beyond, to implement as effective strategies as you can to improve the socioeconomic diversity in your organizations and also social mobility across society and across your communities. So that's really what we're trying to do. In terms of the activity, we are about to send out a form. It's just simply a Google form that we're asking employers to complete. It's mainly based around activities and the impact that those activities have. And the responses will form the basis of a report that we will draft in the autumn and look to get out this year, showing what we think works based on what you've told us. So it might be that we find, as I say, certain initiatives are consistently effective across lots of different employers in lots of different sectors. It might be that others, there are some challenges that remain. Or it might be that you tell us that running mentoring in a particular way has helped you to overcome some challenges that you first had when you first launched it. What we really want is honesty. So this isn't about league tables, it's not about PR, it's not about trying to put your best foot forward. It's about showing us warts and all, what's good, what's bad, how can we be even better. So we're not publishing a league table. We will, at the back of the report, if you're happy, include your name as a respondent, but we're not out there trying to say, look, firm XYZ are brilliant, other firms need to do more to be more like them. There's lots of other initiatives out there that do similar-ish things to that, and that's not what we're trying to do at all. We're then looking to establish this employer advisory group, and that will comprise 10 to 12 members across different sectors, including 2 from member organizations. And we're looking again to be having honest conversations with that group. And they will help to review the report that we draft and will help us going forward, as I'll explain in due course. So in terms of a timeline, we're opening the survey today, and we're looking to close it in about 4 weeks' time so that we can try and get this report out this year. So moving on to the employer advisory group, we're looking to basically set up a group that will help inform the work that we do and to help us to understand the practices that you're finding are effective so that we can share details of that. So the consultation forms a big part of the initial work for the advisory group, but we know that in the years ahead, new things will come up, and we're looking to hear from you what you find works, what doesn't work, and what you think the Commission should be doing. What can we do to help you to improve the diversity in your organizations? So, as I mentioned before, it's going to be about 10 to 12 people, including 8 to 10 leaders from employer organizations and 2 from member organizations. People will serve for an initial term of 2 years, and it will be all of those people will be chosen from people who make a submission in this employer consultation. We're looking to get diversity across the UK, so not for it to be London or centric, for example, or just limited to big cities. We're looking to get a variety of business sizes in, and indeed some of the member organizations might help us to capture some of the smaller businesses too, and for it to be across different sectors. And we're really looking to have a mix of people, whether it's at chief people officer type level or indeed senior leaders who are responsible for social mobility day to day. So it could be chief people officer, it could be your heads of graduate recruitment or heads of recruitment, or indeed people in the D&I space who are responsible for social mobility. We will meet virtually each quarter. It will be led by the Deputy Chair of the Commission, Alan Francis, and Paula who is our Head of Employer Engagement. And we'll ask you just to sign a terms of reference before we kick off. So we will be looking to set that up after the deadline for the consultation. So the consultation itself, the form will basically ask you for at least 1 and up to 5 activities to describe what that activity is. It might be a change in policy, or it might be an intervention like mentoring. And really importantly, to explain why you felt it necessary. Now, in the current political climate, if I can put it like that, I think it's really important that we're explaining why things like employee networks and why things like contextual recruitment or other things are important. So really trying to help make the case for diversity and make the case for social mobility can be really helpful in then explaining why those activities are being done. If you can outline the objective and the resource requirement, and that resource requirement might be internal, so it might be the time and the teams that are needed and that internal resource requirement. And we know that often that can be quite you've got quite stretched constraints internally in terms of being very busy, and also any external resources. So you might be working with third-party suppliers, either businesses or charities, and that can obviously cost money or indeed time. Measuring the impact of these initiatives can be difficult, but we'd love to understand how you're doing it. So if you can try and explain the impact, how you're measuring it, and whether you felt it represented value for money. Now, we know that in some cases you might have very little data and it might be quite anecdotal, and that's fine. But equally, if you do have more data there, then that's great too. So we don't want you to not include something because you don't have the data to hand. We'd much rather you include it and give us what you have. Then we want you to rate the activity from 1 to 5, firstly for impact, and secondly for the resource requirements. So what we want to do, or how we want to use that, is to try to create average kind of ratings for each type of intervention. So you might see an activity, and we'll come on to an example in a second, that you think is a 5 for impact, but it also might have required an awful lot of resources. So that might have been also a 5. But there might have been something else which was a 4 for impact, which required very little resource. And you can see then, by having both of those things, it can really help employers to make decisions about what activities to do. There's also 3 questions where we're asking you in an open-ended question to identify your biggest challenge, what you see as the biggest challenge around social mobility in your organization, and secondly, what barriers still exist within your own organization. And again, that honesty is really important. It might be that getting senior leadership buy-in can be a challenge. It might be the challenges about collecting data or whatever you think. And then more broadly, what changes either within or outside of your organization can make the biggest difference to social mobility in the UK? So again, that will be an open-ended question. You might think it's government policy, it might be what you need schools or universities to do, or something completely different, who knows. And for each of those activities, and indeed those in some of those interventions, we're asking you to categorize it in one of those 5 areas, or it might be more than one of those 5. So you might think, right, we're doing mentoring because we want to help on the talent side, deepening the talent pool. Or it might be you're doing mentoring to help social mobility in your community, and it's nothing to do with deepening the talent pool in your organization. That's fine too. Okay, the next slide. So just to go through an example response, it might be, you might define the activity as, through a data audit, you found that high-performing colleagues from a lower SEB were less likely to apply for promotion. So you had some data on that. So you thought, right, we will set up a mentoring program to match senior leaders with junior staff. And then you saw the impact of that. There's an increase in mentees who applied and were promoted. But you also saw that there wasn't a change in the employer engagement survey responses. So the impact is a little bit mixed, but that was what it was. And then in terms of resources, it was in-house, so you weren't spending money, but there was a fair amount of admin involved. So that's the kind of response we're looking for. It might be more data heavy, it might be a lot more detailed than that, it might be less detailed. It's really down to you what level of detail you can provide. And then, as I say, there's those 2 different scores. resource first of all, impact, maybe a 3 out of 5 here, in that it did have an increase but didn't fully close the gap, and also that survey didn't show the uplift, so maybe it's a 3, not a 4, appreciating it's a bit subjective. And here I thought maybe that's a 2 for resource requirement, but again, that's really subjective and down to you. And this might cover 3 of those building blocks, so vision, culture, and progression. So that's sort of a summary of a typical example. It really is up to you. Try and make them current and relevant. Bullet point format is fine. We're not judging this in any way about how well written it is or anything like that. It really is just to get your kind of feeling about what's good and what's not. You can put in anything from 1 to 5 activities. You don't need to do more than 1. Equally, if you want to do 5 or even do an extra submission, do more than 5. That's fine. Whatever you think is very effective or indeed isn't maybe effective. Okay, and then finally on the next slide, have you got any questions at all? I will maybe ask Edward or Paula to run the questions.
Yes, thank you for all those who've put questions in, and do feel free in the remaining minutes to put any more in, anybody online. So John, we'll just go to, we've had a question in just saying, is there a specific time period for the activities identified that you wish to be identified through the consultation? For example, last 3 years.
So we prefer them to be more current and more recent, but equally, if they are 3 years old, that is fine too. I think with the pandemic and now the return to office that we're seeing more in some sectors and less in others, actually things from 2 or 3 years ago could be very relevant. We don't want to limit it to being within a particular time frame, but obviously the more recent it is, the more relevant it might be. So, but equally, if you could specify that in the form, it would be helpful.
Brilliant, thank you, John. And we'll just go to a question we've had from Gwen. So is it possible to be involved in the advisory group without having responded to the consultation?
We wouldn't rule it out. Do get in touch with us if there is a reason why you can't respond to the consultation, but you think you'd be well placed to be in the advisory group. I think I would expect most, if not all, of the advisory group to be made up of people who have been able to contribute to the consultation, because that's really the type of thing we're asking the advisory group to do. So it would need to be a good reason why contributing to the consultation wasn't relevant. And actually, maybe for some member groups, that might be appropriate.
Brilliant. And we'll move on to the next question. So John Williams has asked, should we share what we've done in the UK only, or also international best practice, for example, from our global offices?
Good question. Not thought of that. I think international examples are very relevant. I think the UK probably has a focus on social mobility in a different way, maybe than other countries, or many other countries certainly. But very happy to see examples of initiatives that have been successful or otherwise elsewhere. Do just provide as much detail as you can, so we can try and work out if it is the extent to which it would apply and be relevant here. I think one thing we're looking to do is to also draw out some case studies to help kind of explain how things might be designed to be more effective or less effective, and that will go into the report too. So we'll be getting in touch with some of the respondents. One of the questions in the form is whether you're happy to be contacted to discuss what you've submitted, and whether you might be happy to provide a case study. So we would reach out to ask you for that.
Brilliant, thanks, John. We just had a question in regarding, you mentioned, although not directly, the SMF's index, so Social Mobility Foundation's index. Will you be consulting with them on their findings and your findings as they collect significant data on employer intervention?
So we work very closely with the Sustainability Foundation. I've worked very closely with Sarah Atkinson, their chief exec, for several years since she joined. And we're a big fan of the employer index. In fact, the Commission were involved at the outset. I think what we're trying to do here is slightly different, and I'm conscious that the responses to to that employer index are very detailed very often and can take an awful lot of effort to produce. But it's also asking for something slightly different. And we're also conscious that because a league table is produced, it's perhaps not the best opportunity to be putting forward examples of where things maybe haven't worked so well. So yeah, we gave the SMF a heads up about what we're doing, and we'll be sharing this with them and working very closely with them as we always have done.
And I think we're running out of time. So John, I'll hand back over to you just to wrap up, and we can answer any questions that have come in separately if you've put your name on them.
Yeah, actually, I'm very happy to answer literally any questions. I'm conscious that the Commission haven't been out there as much as we might have. So if people need to leave, that's fine. Thank you so much for joining. And maybe what we could do is I'll run through these next steps, and then if anyone wants to stay online for any of the other questions, I'm happy to go through them. So in terms of next steps, we will be sending an email out after this session with a link to the online form, and it closes in 4 weeks. We'll promote it on LinkedIn and other channels. Please share with your network. We'd love to get as many responses as possible because it makes the report as comprehensive and accurate as we can. The website address is there, but we'll be emailing it out as soon as possible. And there'll also be this form, the deadline is the 24th of October. That's when we'll also be looking to invite people to join the advisory group. So hopefully that covers all the next steps. And yeah, Edward, I'm happy to answer any other questions that remain in the next 10 minutes or so.